Alright, today we learned about intercepts, and so you're going to identify the x and the y-intercepts of a graph. If you have the graph, you're going to also find them if you're given an equation, and then you're going to graph a line using those intercepts. So again, we talked about this in our last section. The intercept is where a line crosses the axis. So on this graph we actually have two of them, one right there, one right there. The top one that we have is known as the y-intercept, and this is when x equals 0, so we can actually create an ordered pair. The x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, and again you can get an ordered pair where this is that x value, assuming that this was over 4, then our intercept would be 4, 0, and assuming this was up 3, then our intercept would be 0, 3. So there are two ways to write that intercept. I'll ask you to do both. Standard form is ax plus by equals c, and there's some important pieces that you need to know about standard form. The first one is that the ax is first, and it's typically positive. There are no fractions in this equation. This allows you to find the x-intercept, and that is when y is 0, and you'll substitute that in for y and solve for x. It also allows you to find the y-intercept, and the y-intercept is when x equals 0. And when you substitute 0 in, you're left with that by equals c, and you solve it from there. And the last thing is that it is the easiest form to find the x and the y-intercepts. Or at least that's my interpretation. So as you look at this graph, the only thing I'm asking you to do is identify the x and the y-intercepts. So you'll start by identifying this one right here. That's your y-intercept. And we're going to say our y-intercept is located at positive 2. We can write it as an ordered pair over 0 up 2. So both of those forms are acceptable for your answer. Your x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, so right here, and that takes us to back 3. We can write it as an ordered pair, negative 3, 0. So on B, we're doing the same thing. We're identifying these 2 points. This one's known as the x-intercept because it crosses the x-axis, and this other one is known as the y-intercept because it crosses the y-axis. So our y-intercept is up 3. We can write it as an ordered pair, 0, 3. Your x-intercept is over 4, and it can be written as 4, 0. And it doesn't matter which one you list first, just as long as you list both of them on your homework. Okay, another way that we can find the intercepts is by looking at the equation. And I like to break this into 2 parts. I like to say that you're finding the x-intercept first, and I like to say the x-intercept is when y is 0. So we plug 0 into that equation wherever there is a y. And what happens here, 5 times 0 is 0, so you're left with 3x equals 15. To solve this, we divide both sides by 3 to eliminate that 3 and to isolate the x, so x equals 5. And that's where our intercept is. If we were to graph it, it would be over 5. Okay. We can also write the answer as 5, 0, but that's only half of it. You also have to find the y-intercept. I'm going to change colors. The y-intercept is when x is 0. So we're going to take that same equation and replace that x with 0. And this piece, 3 times 0, becomes 0, so you're just left with 5y equals 15. To solve for this, we divide by 5. Those 5's divide out, and you get y equals 3. And you can leave it as y equals 3, or write the y-intercept as 3, or write the ordered pair when x is 0, y is 3. And these would be both of your answers. On B, we're doing that same idea. We're finding the x-intercept by replacing the y with 0. When we replace that y with 0, the 6 times 0 becomes 0, so it's no longer in our equation, and we have 2x equals 6. To solve this, we divide by 2. X equals 3. Those 2's divide out. And to write it as an ordered pair, we would say x is 3 when y is 0. Our y-intercept is when x is 0. So we go into that same equation and replace the x with 0. And this 2 times 0 eliminates, but just be careful because this negative stays on that 6y. We have a tendency just to drop that negative, but you need to keep its sign. And then we'll divide by -6 on both sides. These divide out, and you're left with y equals 6 divided by -6 is -1. And you have an ordered pair at 0, -1. We skipped this in our notes today because we talked about how this is in slope-intercept. And we would identify the slope and the intercept if we were going to graph that equation. Alright, for example 3, it says graph by finding the x and the y-intercept. So we're going to do that same work. The x-intercept is when y equals 0, so we go into that and replace the y with 0. 4 times 0 becomes 0, so we can eliminate it from our equation. And then from here, divide by -3. These 3's divide out. X equals -4. And we have an ordered pair at -4, 0. We also have to find the y-intercept. It asks you to do both. And I'm going to actually graph that back 4, up 0. And if you notice, it's where it crosses the x-axis. The y-intercept is when x equals 0, so we go into the equation, replace the x with 0. And this -3 times 0 becomes 0, so we no longer need it in our equation. And we're left with 4y equals 12. To solve this, we divide by 4. These 4's divide out. Y equals 3, and we have an ordered pair at 0, 3. To graph that, we go over 0, up 3, and it should be right where it crosses the y-axis, and it gives us this line. Okay, on B, because it's in slope-intercept, I would actually just identify the slope as 2/3. The intercept is -6, and use those two pieces of information to graph. So I would go down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and apply my slope up 2, over 3, up 2, over 3, and there's your line. Okay, this says a store sells juice boxes in packages of 6 and 8. They have 288 total juice boxes. This is represented by the function 16x plus 8y equals 22. So we're going to use this formula to find the x and the y-intercepts of the equation and then discuss what that means. So we have 16x plus 8y equals 288, and we're going to start by finding the x-intercept. The x-intercept is when y is 0. We'll replace that y with 0. And 8 times 0 is 0, so we no longer need that in our equation. And then we take what's left and solve it. To solve this, we divide by 16. The 16's divide out, and we get x equals 18. For the y-intercept, This is when x is 0, so we put 0 into our equation wherever there is an x. And then we solve the remaining question, or the equation. So 16 times 0 is 0. We no longer need that in our equation. We're left with 8y equals 288, and we divide by 8. These 8's divide out, and you're left with 36. So to graph these, this is our y, and this is our x. So I would probably go by 2's on my scale for my x. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 18. And then up 36. Let's see, I think I'll go by 4's. And it puts my equation, or my dot right there. And I get this equation here. And the last thing it says is interpret what the x and the y-intercepts mean. So what this means is we get 0, 36 for the y-intercept and 18, 0 here. So it says that you can either have 18 packages of, this should say 16 boxes, or 36 packages of 8 boxes. And that's what I would have you write at the end. Okay, good luck with your worksheet.